Right, thanks very much, Siobhan Griffin. You've been with us now for 2 days at Betesutbytet here in Gökhem.
Well, the most important thing is that these farmers that are here are going to be climate heroes once they learn how their ecosystem functions and a lot of the basics around getting nutrients to cycle faster and their ecosystem to be able to harvest more solar energy. That gives us opportunity to sequester carbon in the soil, like we talked about yesterday. And I'm sure that's happening on this farm, just because of how they're using their animals. And you can't do it without animals. And nature actually, in the past, has used megafauna. Megafauna include wild animals, but also cows are the ancestor to the auroch, who was native to this part of the world, was a big megafauna, twice the size of modern cattle. But that's where our cattle descended from. So if we mimic nature and manage them differently, get them out of the barns and onto the landscape here, this beautiful landscape in Sweden, which is missing her megafauna. They've been gone for, well, really not that long, because in the 70s most of them came off the landscape. But the larger megafauna then were gone 10 or 20,000 years before that.
In general, in Sweden and also across the world, it's most people don't use this type of grazing system. It's more either set stocking or it's you put your animals in there for maybe 2 months and then maybe you move them on. And it's quite a different type of philosophy, holistic plant grazing, to what conventional grazing is like. So do you have any tips for a farmer who's been doing it the conventional way, how to first get started with this type of grazing?
Yeah. I think one important thing is to go slowly and gradually, because I think Mother Nature takes her time and she gets it all done. So, for instance, if a farmer is going to try some regenerative grazing, we'll call it, they might want to just lift their recovery times a little and their residual a little throughout the season and see how they go. Farming isn't just about the soil, it's about entire ecosystem restoration.
Yeah.
On our farm we saw a lot more diversity in plants and animals, more abundance in ground nesting birds and all those things. We see that here. Remember those raptors we saw, and the birds and insects, dragonflies, all these beautiful things. Livestock farming is one of the few types of farming where the biology, all that diversity, can coexist and make the farming better. There were some exceptional things that I saw here on this farm, and everywhere I go I learn something new. And we saw some pastures that had a nice long recovery time and some rest, and we saw a lot more diversity in the grass species, many more grasses, some that I had never seen before, which is quite cool. And then we had other areas where the recovery was shorter, but there was so much diversity in the herbs and the legumes. And so for me that was kind of a lesson that if you want to foster more legumes and herbs, you might want to go with some shorter recovery periods. But if you want to see more species of grasses, it seems the longer recoveries favor that. And that was something I learned yesterday. Yeah, the principles are good. Then once you learn the principles, you start your ecosystem around you, or your farm, whatever the land you're managing, or maybe the fishery you're managing, starts teaching you, because once you understand the principles, then you can see the effects of the changes in your management.
Yeah. One take-home message, what would that be?
So my take-home message, and I got the idea from Alan Savory, so I believe the purpose of his grazing plan is to increase the productivity on your land so that you can feed more livestock, but also more wildlife.
Alan Williams, thank you so much for being here at Betesutbytet this year. You were also here last year, so I suppose this is your second time to Sweden and
Yes,
to
it
this
is.
place. So if you could tell us a bit about your Just little impressions from your time here and what you've seen and so on.
Well, first of all, it's been absolutely wonderful, and we were excited to come back this year, having been here last year. You know, the people are great, food is great, and the interactions and the level of in depth of questions is just phenomenal. So that's what we love. When we do a workshop, we really love for people to be highly engaged, because we all then learn from each other and share our experiences and our context. And I think that's exactly what has happened here.
Yeah.
So first and foremost is that we can do it a very different way, and in a way that, number one, makes us far more profitable and far less reliant on inputs and those types of things. Number two is that we can do this in such a way that we don't have to have antagonisms between farming and vibrant ecosystems. They actually can go together. And so I really want people to know that and understand that we can build vibrant ecosystems and also have farms that are highly profitable and highly productive.
Yeah.
So the very first step, quite honestly, is education. You cannot implement what you do not know. And so we have found that to be the number one barrier for people transitioning into regenerative agriculture, is just lack of awareness and lack of education. So that means you need to seek out that education. All of this really starts within the soil. That's the foundation for all life. And so within regenerative agriculture, that's the very first thing we focus on, is how do we build vibrant life in the soil? And what is the life in the soil? Well, that's the microbial community and then the macroorganisms that live in the soil. So what we want to do is focus on principles and practices that allow us to build that vibrant living community in the soil. I actually like to call them the livestock of the soil. We got to feed, just like we have to feed our livestock up here above the soil surface, we have to first feed our livestock that exists beneath our feet. And then they reward us by feeding minerals and nutrients to the plants that our livestock then eat. And so we call it the rule of compounding. This just keeps building one building block on the next, and so just like you build a building, right? You've got to first lay the foundation to have a solid building. Well, by building the life in the soil, we have laid the foundation, and now we can add brick upon brick upon brick to build the building.
Yeah.